Even with a modern league management system at the top, even with a few clubs trying to lead the way with modern management system, it's like it requires a nationwide revolution to make Malaysian league football great again for fans to really want to come back and sit down at a local stadium beyond your stadium again. The 2024-25 Malaysian Super League season has just concluded with once again Johor Darul Takzim emerging as runaway champions for the 11th time in a row. But beyond the successful conclusion of yet another season in the Liga Super, the question in many Malaysian football fans' minds is how many teams will there be in the 2025-26 Super League season? And because this season it's like a throwback to the more chaotic days in Malaysian club football where once again those same issues, unpaid salaries, falling attendances, lack of funding to keep the players going, and so on and so on. It's just that particularly in a few areas it has reached unprecedented levels in Malaysian professional football. So Tayaja attempts to find out the consequences of all these issues that once again Malaysian club football is facing, and what we could possibly see in 2025-26 ahead. So, for the just concluded Malaysian League season, it is once again in a way on the pitch run of the mill, like Johor running away as champions and the usual suspects, pushing for the other Asian or ASEAN club spots. But this season though, we have seen issues that have prevailed previously in Malaysian club football. It has been simmering for a while, but once again it's reared its ugly head, and it's probably at unprecedented levels. It is probably the first time more than half of the current Malaysian Super League clubs involved in this just concluded season are falling into some kind of financial trouble or mismanagement in one way or another. And a lot of it has to do with, unfortunately, that maxim that old habits really die hard. And not only that, fixtures have been postponed on an unusually frequent basis this season, and it led to a rather comical situation where Pahang offered to play their rearranged home game at the stadium where they were visiting in the first of two games. One of them is an original schedule where they were the visitors. The second one is a rearranged schedule where they were supposed to be the home team. And with all these issues besetting Malaysian club football, it is very hard to see how Malaysian League football is going to upkeep itself, and also how much can Johor Darul Takzim really carry in a way the rest of the league on its huge shoulders, just like that. The big difference between this current Malaysian club football crisis and the previous ones is down to something that's quite significant that has occurred in the last few years, where the league itself was moved from Football Association of Malaysia to a privately owned league enterprise called the Malaysian Football League. And with that, the Malaysian Football League has sole discretion, sole authority over the running of the Malaysian professional football league system. And the signs were already there I think even as early as the last season, when they suddenly scrapped the Malaysian Premier League, the second tier, partially because of budget costs, partially because of constraints. But I think the biggest reality check this time is times have changed so much in Southeast Asian football, especially in the club scene, but yet in Malaysian club football things had somehow remained the same. And because they have remained the same, it has caused a lot of caused a lot of friction. It's caused a lot of unsettling matters, and it has led to this season where previously long-serving league president, Malaysian Football League president Stuart Ramalingam resigning, and his successor, the Italian Rossi, he could not even last 6 months into a job. And now the league is under the hands of an interim president. It's like there's no stability in terms of leadership, there's no stability in terms of club management and finances, and also how clubs deal with various issues. And unfortunately, old habits still die very hard, and we are in the 2020s, not in the 1980s or 1990s or even the 2000s, where the Dunhill money was there, where you have such a largesse of financial backing from tobacco companies. And also majority of the clubs are not exactly on cue the way Johor and to an extent Selangor are pushing ahead in terms of modernizing their management structure, modernizing their the way how the club is run, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of salaries, in terms of the vision. And many of them are still, unfortunately, I think probably management practices still back to put it crudely, in the stone ages when Malaysian League football was at its apex in the late 80s, 90s, before the Gelong scandal took away one generation of players and led to a massive decline in public interest in Malaysian club football. And why is that so? Salaries in Malaysian league football has risen tremendously, really risen to a very high level in recent years, in its attempts in the league's attempt in trying to catch up with particularly Thailand, where leading Thai clubs are paying local and foreign players 5-figure salaries, or even Indonesia, although as questionable as it is, but I think the leading clubs are also capable of giving good salary amounts with rich businessmen backing those clubs and able to fund the salary structure. And then you have Johor Darul Sim, who leads the way in spending those wages at a very high level, followed to an extent by Selangor. But that's where the difference ends. The league itself is catching up, but as I have said earlier, old habits do die hard, and reckless spending is the main cause. If I quote from the former Para FC Chief Executive Officer Yunus Zakaria, it's like in his opinion on the News Straits Times, in an interview back in 26 September 2024, he remarked that many of the Malaysian league clubs are still unwilling to let go of outdated practices. That means when they want to get a player, they promise the sky, but when it comes to the reality, after signing the contracts, and in that ever cyclical system where it's like maybe they pay you the first month, but then afterwards they stop paying, and players get frustrated because they are unpaid for at least 3 months, at times even this season, as we have seen with a few clubs, unpaid for as long as 6 months. And it's a very chronic structure because the clubs who promise the sky are unable to they do not have the financial ability to match this level, and as a result, once they are unable to keep that promise of fulfilling that basic requirement of paying the salaries on time, that's where they suffer. And currently, out of the 13 existing Super League clubs that have just finished the season, only 3 have consistently paid the players on time. Only 3 clubs: Johor, Selangor, and PDRM. There are some clubs that are doing okay, but they do have the odd salary arrear of at least a month. But the more chronic issues have come from clubs who are feeling the strain of unpaid salaries and without the previous backing that they have. Your Perak, which is rumored to be disbanding and not going to participate in the Malaysian Super League 2025-26 season. Kelantan Darul Naim, who were in the news for unpaid salaries. And you also have a few other clubs. Let me see. Kepada notoriously still owing salary arrears, despite having a Menteri Besar as the president of the Kedah Football Association. And for a period of time until a new management executive council took over Kuala Lumpur FA early this year, Kuala Lumpur City, where they were owed a few months of salaries. So, and more recently, ever since Dato' Okim Sri left Sabah for Persis Solo at the turn of the year, Sabah have been sort of struggling financially and crowds have sort of dwindled despite having those players. So you wonder whether those clubs have that ability to sustain themselves, especially when the top clubs, that means Johor and Selangor, they are leading the way with extremely high salaries and being able to upkeep them, because like it or not, they do have, Johor has the royal backing of the region of Johor, Tunku Ismail Idris, and the various companies that back the Malaysian League giants. Then you have Selangor, who are back on a good footing with the patronage of the Raja Muda of Selangor, and with also a rather sound management system. Yes, Selangor has a better management system now than it had in the past after some intervention from the royal family. So the salaries are back again in good order, and they are once again rising to be one of the better clubs after a period in mediocrity, where they finished for the second successive season second in the Malaysian Super League. PDRM, obviously with the Malaysian police backing. So once again, there's a pattern. For all the talk about professionalism, for all the talk about restructuring the league to make the league more financially viable, competitive, it is like you still need, clubs still need patronage, royal backing, state government funding to ensure that these clubs survive even in the era of privatization, which is only, as we've realized, is only named when in practice is still on this old system. But salaries have risen a lot from the leading clubs, a lot. And some of the clubs, in their bid to catch up with the Joneses, tried to do the same, but they do not have the same amount of money as they used to. And nowadays, state governments are also very cautious, whether they are backing the football club or otherwise. They are very cautious in just carelessly throwing away money to the football clubs. Ironically, Selangor led the way after Pakatan Harapan took over the state government in 2008, and that's why there was a lot of haggling over the usage of resources or the amount of funding needed to fund Selangor FC. But with a more professional management structure under their long-serving CEO, at least Selangor has found themselves in a good stable footing to at least be more than competitive in the next few seasons ahead. And Johor, obviously, with a sound management system, although with a extensive influence from the region of Johor, TMJ, but still At least they have modernized their management systems and all that. But what about the other clubs? In Kuala Lumpur City, Stanley, the former CEO, Stanley Bernard, he had to fight tooth and nail, and there was so many behind the scenes going on just to get players to pay salaries on time and all that, to the point that I think it did put him in a rather depressed mode. Although right now he's in a better place, having been just recently appointed as the assistant CEO of Harimau Malaya, where he reports to the CEO Rob Friend in that privatized National League, national team structure. Then what about the other clubs? It's like Sabah. The moment Ong Kim Swee went, I think the main backer, led by their member of parliament in the Dewan Rakyat, Bung Mokhtar, they stopped, I think, or they froze or they slowed down the funding. So it's like, you promise these players these high salaries, but yet they were unable to fulfill them. So it is a perennial headache that needs to be solved, and clubs need to realize, as TMJ also said, it's like, if you only have $10 or $15, you don't spend $25 on a player if you cannot afford it. I think it's the same basic logic, but yet Malaysian clubs tend to somehow keep overlooking that. And then there's also a saying about, you can't drag the horse to drink water when it does not want to. And it's unfortunately the case that led to Stuart Ramalingam and his successor quitting within months in succession, because I think, as I said earlier in this video, old habits really die hard. Outdated practices, as mentioned by former Perak FC Chief Executive Officer Yunus Zakaria. It's like they still only know how to spend recklessly. They do not have proper governance and administration, which turns sponsors away, turns potential sponsors off, because this is not the Dunhill era or even your Liga Perdana era. And because old habits die hard, it's a continuous cycle of, like, now they've, like, it starts with state cash injection, promise the sky, fail to pay salaries on time, clubs get into trouble and probably needs a new buyer, and then you get that cycle going on and on for many of these, for the majority of the existing clubs in the Malaysian Super League. And already the Malaysian Football League has already acted in the past when it comes to financial irregularities and mismanagement, where I think in the past few seasons, 2 clubs were expelled in the league at the end of a season for failing to fulfill financial commitments. If I'm not wrong, they were Malacca United and Kelantan United. And even though Malacca survived to stay in the Super League, but they were kicked out because they failed to fulfill their financial requirements. And when all these practices really die very hard, the culture is still there after those decades, the mentality is still there after those decades. And even with a modern league management system at the top, even with a few clubs trying to lead the way with modern management system, it's like it requires a nationwide revolution to make Malaysian league football great again, for fans to really want to come back and sit down at a local stadium beyond your the stadium again. Even Johor JDT, they experienced a rather acute problem this season when the fans mainly turn up to watch them play in Asia, but not in the Malaysian league. Like, in some cases where it's more than half empty, and it's like that ripple effect is also being felt. It's like when other clubs are not attracting sponsors, they are not doing well, crowds stop coming. Even when JDT comes to town, maybe not as much as they used to, and then then Johor also feel rather bored. The Johor fans feel bored because they have so much success that it feels like it's a repeat, and they do not attend except when it comes to Asia. It's like fans really vote with their feet on these occasions. And it is not as though the league authorities are not trying. It's like at the start of that 24-25 league season, 3 Super League clubs were each fined 15,000 ringgit for failing to meet the financial reporting deadlines. So they were making an effort, but it appears that maybe the fines are not that high enough to make the clubs wake up and act on them. It's like probably it's a bit like like maybe there's an argument, but there's that culture like, okay, let's settle in peace and let's continue the season ahead. Probably Stu Ramalingam realized that clubs can be so reticent that you can try to move heaven and earth and whatever, but somehow these clubs stay as they are, and it's frustrating for him. That's why he resigned. His successor also found it that frustrating. That's why he also resigned. And so as a result, there's no leadership in the Super League. I mean, there's no leadership in the Malaysian Football League, and hence it's really, the league itself is drifting like a rudderless ship. And having talked so much about all these issues that's plaguing the Malaysian league system, the postponements and all that, I think the season has just ended, and you wonder whether which clubs can survive for the next season in the 25-26 campaign. Which clubs can really survive for the 25-26 campaign? I mean, if you look at the current existing clubs, because I think for the first time there's no relegation this season after the scrapping of the Liga Perdana, the Premier League. So obviously Johor, Selangor, PDRM, they are going to be back again next season. Kuching City, having done incredibly well by the recently minted Coach of the Year, Aidil Sharin Sahak of Singapore, they are also going to be there. Sabah is a question mark, but they should be able to survive to stay on for at least another season in league football along with Kuala Lumpur City. And then you have Penang, who are doing okay, but the other clubs are all generally in peril. So it's like I've already named around 7 clubs that will still exist for the 25-26 season, even though KLCT also rather has recently stirred a minor controversy by putting up an advertisement calling for an all brand new existing coaching team, even though Miroslav Kulinak and his existing coaching staff are still in their respective roles. So then what about the other clubs? Where do they go from there? Let's see, Terengganu, they probably will survive despite being old wages. They will still survive. Perak, despite finishing 7th, is rumored to be the first to disband, and if Perak disband, it could lead to the domino effect where the few more clubs could withdraw from competing in the league for the 25-26 season. Kelantan United, I do believe they are almost done. Even with the expulsion of the Red Warriors after failing financial irregularities, it seems like old habits still die hard. I don't know how many times I've been saying about old habits die hard. That's why Kelantan United, they are bottom of the league. They are not relegated, but I think they are done. They will probably not compete for the next season. Negeri Sembilan, interesting. They are not doing that well either. Kepada, one of the 2 teams TMJ mentioned in his meeting with the fans that they will not survive in the league. The other is Pahang, but it remains to be seen whether Pahang can still hang on, because royal patronage is not as high as it used to be under the late Sultan Ahmad Shah, and with Sultan Abdullah now back to focusing on his state affairs as the state sultan, it remains to be seen whether other royalties in the Pahang royal family are willing to step up to help Fandi Ahmad to achieve more credible goals for the next season. In So it is really the season of flux, but I do not see the league being reduced to just 8. Yes, the lowest number of teams that Malaysian League football has endured since becoming semi-professional and later professional in the late 80s. 8 clubs. That was in the mid 2000s when Malaysian Super League was first formed in 2004, and they decided that having 8 clubs was probably ideal to build a sustainable football pyramid calendar. But obviously, after 1 season, 2 seasons of stability, things went back to their usual form. So it is very hard for Malaysian League football to sustain itself, to grow, to develop a natural ladder where you have your Liga Super, Liga Kepada, maybe the A1 semi-pro as the third tier instead of the unofficial second tier this season, and so on and so forth. And it's back to drawing board, despite the grand promises of having the football pyramid where they want to have the Liga Super all the way down to Liga 4. It's all back to drawing board again. So there's no sustained focus on what they want to do to build a medium-term future for the Malaysian club football ecosystem. And probably they have to recognize salaries is an issue. Salary arrears are there. What's the next solution? Probably is it how do I put it? Is it because of salary? I wouldn't say salary arrears or situations, but a salary cap needed, but that would impact Johor's ambitions of competing in Asia, possibly Selangor's as well. How do they balance all this? Do they need to cut the number of foreigners for the clubs? I mean, give probably special dispensation for those who are competing in Asia, just in Asia. Those competing in the ASEAN Club Championship can stick to the existing foreign player quota, so that you don't overpay so much and you realize that you cannot pay after a while. Then there's a need for a new permanent CEO of the Malaysian Football League, so that there will be proper top to rank and file administration to get the gears going and to improve the state of the Malaysian League football. And even as Johor Darul Takzim take on Pahang in the Malaysian Cup final to close the entire Malaysian League season, I think then there's also fixtures, the postponements because of bad weather, because of, I think, Johor saying that they need to prepare for the Asian Club competition campaign and all that. I think the lack of foresight, the lack of farsightedness that is in the financial matters also applies in other areas of administration as well, especially in league fixtures. I do suggest that I think competition departments around the world, in the various leagues around the world, they do plan standby dates in case, okay, if this day X match cannot carry on because of a thunderstorm that makes the pitch unplayable, okay, we'll set it on this spare date where this is the makeup date for this fixture. Or it's because of, let's say, of some campaign or election that this cannot happen. They have to probably foresee this few contingency plans where maybe you put this date as a standby date for this potential rearranged fixture, so that at least clubs can plan for their logistics and travel arrangements, especially for the visiting teams, and not have their season rhythm disrupted, especially when it comes to the mid-season and towards the end of the season, having just transitioned into a fully autumn to spring league format this year. So it's a massive adjustment for all the clubs, and that's where I think having a new proper CEO should put things in place in all these other administrative matters and get really tough on the financial aspects of it. If they need to impose a salary cap on those who really fail in certain levels, you can't just say one level everybody fulfills it, but maybe you don't know what paperwork is missing and all that. You need at a few levels. If they fail to be a certain level, what will happen? If they can't meet this lower level, are they going to be deducted points? Are they going to be given fines? And how about, I know it's controversial, using the English League fit and proper system. It's like, although the royalties will not be too happy on this, like, I'm already royal, I have privilege. Why should I need a fit and proper system? But this is to ensure that whoever is coming in to own the club, they have the financial means to keep the club going, even when clubs are not generally profitable, to find new structures in which they are able to expand in getting money beyond the ticket sales or sponsors, benevolence, or patronage, is to think out of the box. Like merchandise sales, like what Kuala Lumpur City did with the KLFA 50th anniversary with their unique jersey designs that was sold out twice online, or establishing season ticket sales and all these things, as a few clubs have already done, to ensure to keep the commitment of the fans there, and also to build a sound financial system that goes beyond your ticket sales and match day attendances. Then, beyond that, what can they think, what can clubs think to ensure that the clubs survive and one day they can be so self-sufficient that they can reduce the amount of funding on the level of funding on the level of funding on the the level of funding from the government or state government or sponsors. So it's a massive reset ahead for many of these clubs. A big reality check, although I do suspect this is not going to be the first and last time I'm going to talk extensively on this, but I think we hope that when the next few seasons of the Malaysian Super League season conclude with fewer of such issues, then we can positively say that Malaysian club football is back on a decent grounding and with potential to grow steadily. You don't have to pay high salaries if you cannot afford, but you have to pay good salaries to ensure that local players don't go hungry and resort to other means to survive, and foreigners to go and sue, petition to the PFAM and FIFA over salary arrears and all that issues. So if they can get all these rights gradually in the next 2-3 seasons, which could be the crucial window in which either this existing Malaysian structure exists or perishes.